It's 11 o'clock. Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Stephen Goodwin. I'm President and CEO of TurningWest. We are an organization development and leadership consulting firm based in Southern California with clients all across North America and Europe. We specialize in organizational culture and all things people. As if whatever you're doing, whether you're for-profit, nonprofit, or in government, your work is all involving people, and that's our specialty. I'm joined with our colleague, my colleague, Joel Rude. Joel, you want to say a word about yourself and who you are?
Sure enough. Good day, everybody. I joined TurningWest about 4 years ago after a 35 or so career in the nonprofit world as an executive director of year-round camps and conference centers and other organizations in the nonprofit realm. And all of them tended to be a bit messed up on the people side of things and systems and so forth. So I learned how to help make messes more user-friendly and met Steve along the way. He helped us with one of those scenarios.
That's right. That's right. It was some years back. And for all of you joining, I'm sure that you would agree with us that no matter what you're in, whether you're saving the whales or saving the children or building a business, that people are some of your most challenging conundrums to undertake. And we're going to talk today about one of those challenges and how people in groups behave and how we as leaders can help to try to shape some of that group behavior. So without further ado, let me just kind of dive into the subject of understanding gossip and rumor.
Though, before you go there, you can see along the bottom of your screen, hopefully, some options. I'll be monitoring the Q&A section if you have a question you would like us to address at some point.
Good. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate that. So I became fascinated with gossip and rumor early in my life. My professional life, my first 25 years, I was a Lutheran parish pastor, and I discovered that, gossip ran rampant in congregations. The tighter the group, the more the gossip seemed to go, and I needed some better skills and tools to deal with this. So in my doctoral program, I did a fair bit of study on gossip and rumor and how does a leader, manage that as much as possible and try to prevent some of it from happening as much as is possible. So we're going to share some tips and tricks today about this from some first order research been done quite a number of years ago that we can use to make practical applications. So let's dive in, shall we? So perhaps you've been in a situation like this, where you have been the victim of a couple of people like these two girls whispering behind your back, perhaps even to your face, and talking about you. And no doubt you felt a little bit like this young woman here. I don't know quite what to read on her face, but forlorn, dejected, a little depressed, maybe a little amused by it all. Who knows? But no doubt it doesn't take much for me to evoke amongst you what it feels like to be the subject of gossip or rumor. It's no fun at all. Perhaps you've been in organizations where you knew the minute you got up from the lunch table that they're going to be talking about you, and that was never a comfortable or delightful feeling, certainly. The opposite scenario is perhaps you've been like these two gentlemen. You've went to grab a cup of coffee at the kitchen and you start chatting, and pretty soon one or the other of you starts to talk about people who aren't there with you. This is also something that's familiar to us in human experience. We know what this is like and what it feels like. If you're like the gentleman on the right, how do you avoid the gossip is a question that I know arises in our minds. We're going to talk a little bit about that today and try to give some tips and tricks about that. And, how do we avoid and watch ourselves from not being the starter of gossip or the passer on of gossip? We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So this is an issue that's, it's quite relevant. This is the New York Times, 2 articles in the past week. I find this a bit amusing that there's a conspiracy around Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, and they're making a political deal out of this and kind of a conspiracy theory. We might say that conspiracy theories are kind of the ultimate gossip and rumor. I kind of reached a fever pitch, as it were. And perhaps even are analysis today of gossip and rumor might help you understand why those conspiracy theories get born and how they're transmitted and how they keep alive. And the bottom one, there's a story just a couple days ago, a week ago or so, of a tragic accident, and then it became a kind of a rumor mill, and people kind of thought that there was something amiss in this, and we're going to talk about how that might have happened in this seminar today. So one of my favorite poems, there's a snippet that says this: "Swift through the Libyan cities rumor sped. Rumor, what evil can surpass her speed? In movement she grows mighty and achieves strength and dominion as she swifter flies. Small first, because afraid, she soon exalts her stature skyward, stalking through the lands and mantling in the clouds her baleful brow. Feet swift to run and pinions like the wind the dreadful monster wears. Her carcass huge is feathered, and at the root of every plume a peering eye abides, and, strange to tell, an equal number of vociferous tongues, foul, whispering lips, and ears that catch all. She can cling to vile invention and malignant wrong, or mingle with her words some tidings true." This, dear friends, was written 2,000 years ago by Enid in his book of sonnets. And he quite captures really well this whole power of rumor, of how it speeds so clearly. It speeds so swiftly. I was a parish pastor in a small town outside of Seattle once, and I used to wear my clerical collar, my Episcopal white collar all the way around. And there was a local pub a block from my office where they served the best root beer on tap. They brought it in kegs, this craft root beer. I used to like to go down there at lunchtime and have a burger and a root beer. But the trouble was, it came in a mug, the same mug that the beers came in, and it was dark in color, so it looked like a beer. And I once tracked a rumor at 30 minutes, flew around town through at least 4 lips, where "I heard you were having a beer at the pub for lunch today, Reverend." I still laugh about that and think, well, yep, you do have to watch what you do. Rumor does fly at quite a speed. And mantling in the clouds, her baleful brow, feet swift to run, and pinions like the wind that dreadful monster wears. That is rumor indeed.
I want to add something to this,
yeah,
Steve, because it's a powerful poem. And I read it out loud to myself, and it struck me, even though I'm very familiar with the downsides of unchecked gossip and unchecked rumor. Just hearing myself read it out loud in different intonations was powerful for me. So you're all going to receive this slide deck in an email afterwards. If this is an issue in your organization or pockets of it, I would encourage you to distribute the poem and have people read it, and then read it together and discuss what the imagery brings to mind. Because we can get so used to it that we kind of allow it, ignore it. But reading this can really help you go, yeah, maybe this is something we need to pay attention to.
That's really good advice, Joel. I really like that. Yeah, the power of language written well, like Enid does here, and Enos does here in his poem, really kind of captures the whole depth of this. And I like that last word, or mingle with her words some tidings true. As we are going to find out, there's often a little bit of truth in every rumor. That's what makes it so disparate to figure out, is how do we sort the truth from the not truth. This has been an issue all the way along through human experience, including during World War II. If you remember some of this from your history lessons, that the country was quite concerned about spreading rumor, especially around the placement of personnel and where they were stationed in the military. And so the U.S. War Office published posters all over the United States. And these are 3 examples: quiet, loose talk can cost lives, or loose lips sink ships. And the last one, kind of a baleful puppy dog there because someone talked, his master's not coming home, his sailor's not coming home. So this was quite the rage, the conversation in the whole country about rumor and gossip during the Second World War. And shortly after, two Harvard researchers, Gordon Allport and Leo Postman, his student, did some research on these posters. They wanted to understand what were the effects of those posters. Did they have any beneficial effects or not? And what happened in the midst of all that? This is a fascinating book. If you ever want to pick up a few bucks, you can probably find it on Amazon.com like I did. And it's a really interesting read about their research and about the nature of gossip and rumor. We're going to unpack their thoughts throughout our time together this morning. Even now, into the modern age, as the artificial intelligence and machine learning are on the rise, people are concerned, programmers are concerned with how do we get the computer to sort truth from rumor, from information. And so they're developing these machine learning pathways to sort out what's a humorous anecdote, what's sarcastic, what's a hoax, finger pointing, what's a tabloid, yellow press, fearful propaganda. Is that what that's all about? So this is still an issue for us today, as we saw even in the New York Times a few minutes ago. So some things about rumors, some realities about rumors. Let me share with them for you. If information isn't available, it gets produced. So this is a significant piece of information for leaders of organizations, especially tight-knit organizations like social nonprofits and others where the group is really tightly bound together. If there's some information that doesn't get distributed, people will spontaneously produce it. Now, this is most the case. It's not deliberate. People aren't deliberately spreading rumors, although that does happen. I want to acknowledge that. But for the most part, what's happening is subconsciously people will fill in the gap in their mind. Well, it must be this, or she must be doing that. And that information gets passed along, and then it begins to morph, as we will see.
And it happens because it is human nature to want to make sense out of things. And if there are gaps in the information, how do I make sense out of this? And if I don't make up the information, I'm going to be listening for somebody else who might have some.
Yeah, absolutely, Joel. Human beings are sense-making machines. That's we need to make sense out of everything. It needs to have some rationale or reason to it. And so if it's not there, that's what will get produced. The second reality about rumor is really also super important for leaders to know. When group excitement is high, rumors become spontaneous. And Joel and I were talking yesterday about this word excitement, and I'm thinking in terms of like electrons in an atom. When they get really super excited, they start bouncing off each other, or think perhaps like cooking popcorn on the stove with the lid on. As the popcorn gets heated, bang, 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 they bounce off each other. This is true in social groups as well. When group excitement is high, then rumors start generating instantly. Bang, 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 rumors start to fly because excitement is really pushing that development.
One of the other words we used yesterday was agitation.
Yes.
Or anxiety. If that exists in the system, again, people want to make sense out of something so that they can mitigate their own agitation and anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. And so as a leader, you want to be always watching, how anxious is my system? How emotional are people at this moment? This is part of leadership, and people don't often think about this as a leader, but this is a huge part of being a leader of a group, watching how are we calm? Are we dispassionate? Now we can still be passionate about what we're doing, but when we get too out of whack with our emotions, or too excited or anxious, lots of other stuff starts to begin to happen. The third reality here is the quantity of rumors is limited only by the availability of channels, which, if you remember your math lessons from back in the day of school, permutations and combinations, the number gets really high really fast. Me and Joel and Juarez and Letitia, back and forth between all of us, multiplies infinite number of people, and the quantity of rumors will go up with the larger size of the group.
I would add to this, and it's not a guarantee that it's going to eliminate rumors and gossip, but the amount of facts in the system or lack of facts in the system will also play a part in how much rumors spread.
Right, exactly. We're gonna talk more about that in a little depth about how to combat rumors using that exact reality. Again, the more emotions are increased or inflated, something else happens to the rumor. There's more distortion in the rumor. So the more anxious, the more upset, the more mad, the more difficult people are, the more distorted the rumor becomes. I once was called in to a group of churches in Northwest Chicago, and they had 4 churches had merged, and they had botched the sale of their buildings. They were going to sell 3 of the buildings and properties and merge it into the one. And it had gone really badly. Someone had made a horrible set of mistakes. And the language that they were using was strident and really extreme. I'm going to kill those people. We're going to nuke that group. I mean, it was literally war talk and violent language, which was a reflection of how emotional they were about this upset experience that they had had. And it was an immediate reaction to me, immediate, signal to me that we needed to do something immediately to calm things down and reduce the emotionality and get back to some different place so we could move forward as a group. Number 5, deliberate rumors will be spread if they're consistent with what people expect and desire. Here again is a very useful tip for leaders. If you have a low trust system, if people have known leadership or even previous leaders before you to be untrustworthy or even deceitful, or name the emotion or name the condition, then this is when deliberate rumors start to get spread, right? And they become consistent with what people expect. So here's where the gap gets filled in. Well, I know our system isn't trustworthy, or they're always looking to cheat us, so I know they're going to cheat us in this time. Right? And that starts to distort the rumor and makes it more consistent, quote unquote, in the person's mind or the listener's mind.
And another way that happens is that as you learn to read people's nonverbals and you connect their nonverbal reactions to factual things that had happened in the past, if they demonstrate that nonverbal in the future, our minds tend to go to that sense-making need, and we jump to conclusions about what's really going on, even though the nonverbal at this point may not mean the same thing or be connected to the same reality that it was in the past. I inherited a lot of issues in the organizations I led, and stories were told of the previous leader's nonverbal response, and when he would do that, I knew this was going on. And I actually had conversations with those previous leaders, and it was not exactly as it had been interpreted.
Yeah, that's really powerful, Joel. Yeah, our mind just fills in the blanks because we expect the world to be consistent. This, as you said there, we expect that the current leaders will behave like the previous leaders when these nonverbals or verbals happen, and people kind of expect that the world will stay the same. And of course, that's not consciously true. But that's what happens. The other one, this one's just infuriating to us all. But in ambiguous situations, disproven rumors that support personal interests and beliefs will still be believed despite evidence to the contrary. People will still kind of believe these rumors. There's this old rumor that the Procter & Gamble logo was a satanic symbol. And it's been disproven many, many thousands and thousands of times over and over again with just clear evidence. But yet still, people will still believe that because that rumor still has persisted decades later after it was first begun. This is really a challenge. So as leaders, again, the more we can lead for clarity and reduce ambiguity, we have a better chance of reducing rumors. One of the things that we like to say at TurningWest when we work with organizational systems is clarity, structure, tools. always beginning with clarity. Whose role is this? What are we here about? What are we doing? Clarify our values, clarify our vision, clear about our mission, and then we could be more successful. Your thoughts, Joel, about this?
One additional thought would be, even though postmodern culture and pluralistic societies say truth is relative, people want some truth. They need to know what is true in order to mitigate that anxiety and reduce the emotional turmoil or whatever. So they'll grab at, or they'll reinforce what number 6 here says, because unless they've got a more developed internal locus of control or a sense of groundedness, they want something that sounds or feels true, and they're not comfortable with any degree of mystery.
That's right. Yes. I love that last line, not comfortable with any degree of mystery. I wish that were not the case, but that is very much the human condition. As leaders, it really helps to understand how rumors get formed. And a couple of rules here will help you. This is from Postman and Allport again. First of all, there's the process of leveling. So if you ever played that old telephone game and you get a line of 15, 20 people and you pass a simple statement from one lips to one set of ears all the way down, what you'll experience is the rumor becomes, the message gets shorter, more concise, more understandable, and more repeatable, so that it can be easily remembered. So language will get shaped and changed so it's repeatable and understandable, but it gets shortened. And so when you're putting out information into your systems, thinking about making your message short, concise, understandable, and repeatable is one way of helping it from not becoming a rumor, because you've already taken some of these steps yourself, and hopefully it can go in that form and stay the same as it gets moved from person to person and from messenger to messenger.
Reduced the mystery.
Reduce the mystery. Yeah, absolutely. Because the rumor will also get sharpened. People hear what they want to hear and what they expect to hear, and they retain the desired results. In other words, they'll remember the most salacious parts of the message and forget the more mundane parts of the message, and that gets sharpened a bit and changed a little bit in that regard, and that's what gets repeated. This is significant. And the final one is rumors become assimilating. They become more internally consistent with personal expectations as missing elements are added to make them more plausible, to make them more fit with how I expect reality. Joel mentioned a minute ago about how truth works, and philosophers have what they call the coherence theory of truth. In other words, if something I hear sticks to with what I've known before, or I believe to be fact before, it coheres in essence. Therefore, this new thing must be true. And so as people hear these messages, they assimilate with what they experienced in the past. If that's internally consistent, then it gets stuck to what they know, what they, quote, know. That becomes really significant.
I do have a quick story that illustrates that.
Yeah, please.
One of the year-round camps and conference centers I worked at, the food service manager and the assistant food service manager, both very competent professional people, generally level-headed. Not all human beings are level-headed all the time. They found out about a Facebook post posted by a relatively new part-time cook who had a really rough background but was making a new life for himself. And it was a pretty inflammatory post. And they assumed that the post was about them. So the food service manager and the assistant food service manager got pretty worked up about this new part-time cook who had this rough background targeting them. And I had a couple of conversations with them and said, now consider what he has already told us. He's trying to break ties with his past. And he's probably doing that in this Facebook post, if you read it through that lens instead of the lens that you're leaning towards right now. it ended up in we had a meeting with the whole group and the HR person, and I just said, here's what the reality is. Here's an interpretation. Here's an interpretation. And I was looking at the part-time person. I said, can you tell us what's really going on here? And he was trying to break with his past group of friends. The food service manager and the assistant manager, both older adults with more life experience, jumped to a conclusion based out of their own internal insecurities and fears, which they admitted to at this. Anyway, it all cleared up, but they were doing this assimilating thing, and it was causing a lot of friction inside the whole department, not just between the three people.
That's a great story, Joel. And that's one of the things that we human beings do is we, quote, tell ourselves a story. So we start to tell ourselves a story that, well, Joel doesn't like me, or that group is angry at me. And without checking our facts to the contrary, we start believing that story, and it becomes something that then sometimes if we pass that on, well, that group doesn't like me, or that group, she hates me. And that can become a rumor too. So one of the things that we need to do internally with ourselves is go and talk to people first without telling ourselves a story about what we believe to be true, and check out that story and find out if it's really the fact or not. And generally it's not. In every leader's life, there comes a moment where we thought to ourselves, what do I do to fight these rumors? And I have made this mistake myself, because it's tempting to fight rumors and gossip directly. I recall I was a parish pastor of a small town church outside of Seattle, and the gossip was just vicious in that church, and rumor were rampant. And I got up one Sunday and I preached a hellfire and brimstone sermon telling people to stop gossiping. Well, you know what happened? People started asking each other, well, what do we know? What do I know? What do you know that I don't know? Is there more? And gossip increased. It actually made it worse. The more I fought against the gossip, the more people went searching for, well, there must be something going on that I don't know about. What do you know? And all that, and it just absolutely inflamed the situation, like pouring water on a gasoline fire. It just spread it everywhere. Absolutely the worst decision I ever made in that place as a leader. So whatever you do, you can't go around saying, stop gossiping, or I know you're gossiping. And it will just only make things worse.
Well, and in some cases, people don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
I have another story, but I won't have to go into it. It's just that people from certain generations or certain subcultures, they're unfamiliar with the concept of gossip as we're talking about it right now. So sometimes you have to actually unpack, this is the behavior we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, that's very helpful. It's very helpful. So more ideas here. This is from Kurt Levine. Kurt Levine is the father of organization development. He was actually doing his best work right after the Second World War. He was a German Jew who escaped Nazi Germany before the war. That's so his name is often pronounced in the German fashion Levine instead of Lewin there. But his force field analysis from 1948 was very insightful about human dynamics. He said, human beings like homeostasis. We like things to stay the same. That's that center position. And there are driving forces and there are restraining forces. So there are driving forces. What do you know, Joel? Do you know something that I don't know? I want to figure out what's going on. And restraining forces can be something like, well, stop gossiping. And his suggestion for these social situations is quite counterintuitive. He says you don't increase the driving forces. Instead, you decrease the restraining forces. So force field analysis looks like this on this next slide. So imagine, there's a goal off onto the right side. People want to know what's going on, or what's really going on around here. And some of the driving forces are on the left-hand side. People are a little bit bored, don't have enough to do. They've got this high curiosity level. These arrows are representative of the amount of force, in essence, in a loose use of that term. The authority they have to try to figure out what's going on, and suspicion they might have. And then the restraining forces are such that, well, there's a huge lack of meaningful work around here. There's a lack of trust in leadership. There's little information available. people are saying don't gossip, trying to hold back the drive to finding out what's really going on around here. And in Kurt Levine's theory, what you do is you actually then, whoops, excuse me, go one slide too many. You decrease the forces on the right, you don't increase the forces on the left. So in other words, you give more interesting projects. So there's lots of meaningful work. So people don't feel so bored. That you increase trust in leadership so that there's not a force pushing there. This one's significant. You offer more information in the system and you stop demanding that people stop gossiping. This becomes a huge counterintuitive way to fight information. So for example, what this means in practical terms is we really want to increase the flow of information as much as possible. And we're often like that second slide I showed you of the two gentlemen standing around the coffee cooler. We often find ourselves, standing there and someone starts to gossip. And we're often at a loss for what do we say in that moment? What do we do in that moment to not be party to that gossip? My wife had a therapist who worked for her who was just a really gifted natural leader. And she taught me a phrase that I've since adopted. She'd say to people like this, she'd say, let's honor those who aren't present, which I thought was a very gracious, very loving, very simple way to just turn people away from gossip. And I love this phrase because it reminds people that people might be saying things about you when you're not present. So let's honor those who aren't present here in the same way you'd want to be honored. I find this a really nice way to turn away gossip when it's starting to happen with a lot of respect and quite a great deal of dignity. Additionally, we want to make sure that we're the person who's not transmitting gossip. So we have to watch ourselves to make sure that we're a person who gets known as you're not going to hear gossip and you're not going to transmit gossip. And that's a huge part of our own character and our own integrity as professionals in social systems.
And one way to help yourself and those around you to practice these with consistency is to reflect on and have conversations and practice your values. The more clear you are individually and as a group and an organization about your core values, the more often you can tie a preferred behavior to those values and recognize an unpreferred behavior as inconsistent or incongruent with my values or the value system that we aspire to or that we actually hold ourselves to. That, I think, is more effective, obviously, as Steve has said. To say stop gossiping has the opposite effect. Well, what do you do in its place? I'm going to suggest you tie behaviors into the values. Here's the behaviors that we really want to do. You don't even have to say instead of gossip and rumor, but here's the behaviors that we really want to aspire to. They're tied to our values in this way. Right. It's like getting used to bank tellers who practice with real money instead of counterfeit money. They get so used to what real money feels like, that's what they're paying attention to.
Absolutely. And there always are these moments where we do fall into gossip. We are human beings, and I will admit that I have done and sometimes still do. And when I do, it's up to me to hold up to my value of integrity to go back and clean that up. Right? To go back to the person and say, you know what, I really want to take back some of the things I said the other day. I hope you'll forgive me. I kind of wallowed into some gossip. I would appreciate if you would just, give me a moment of grace, and I'm going to try not to do that behavior again. We do have to do that as human beings, go back around and clean up our behavior. And that also helps people get to know us as the person who's not going to transmit gossip and who really is working hard at not being the gossip in the group. Huge thing of our own personal integrity. As leaders of organizations, one of the ways you use to reduce gossip and rumor is increase the flow of information as much as you are able. So I always like to, you can find this on the website. You can find this on, there's information in the back of the room. You can go find more information. My office is open. Here's my contact information. If you want to know more about this, I'm happy to share it. And to do this in a repetitive, consistent pattern. Madison Avenue advertisers know that we don't hear something just once and let it sink in. People have to hear information over and over and over again. So if you're in a system that might be susceptible to gossip and rumor, increase the flow of information, right? This is hugely available, and make sure that information is readily available to folks so they don't have to go searching for it. It's the process of going to search for it that drives people to fill in those gaps, as we mentioned in the rumor realities, and they fill them in the way that's not helpful, productive, or true. So if they know that the information is widely available and anyone can go get it, it's over there, it's on the website, go talk to Stephen or Joel or whatever, and they'll tell you that whole skinny, then people don't manufacture even unconsciously or subconsciously information that's not true. Additionally, build systems of high trust. Again, this goes back to leadership integrity and leadership system integrity. If we're a high trust system, when something comes along, people go, you know, I know Stephen, that can't be true of him. That doesn't fit with anything I know of my experience with him. And so they're less likely to believe that rumor and more likely to contest it when there's a real high degree of trust, consistency, and consistent behavior.
When one suggestion for tying these three bullets together would state your intent.
Yes.
We really do want to build into our system, our culture, high levels of trust. So we're increasing the information. Here's how to get the information. And I'm going to raise the bar, folks, and expect you to pursue this. I'm not just going to casually mention that it's out there if you want it. No, if we want this kind of culture, here's what we can provide, and now here's what we expect from you.
Good. That's well said. Personal agency, put it back on people to own their own behavior. And then finally, you know, be as transparent as you possibly can while protecting privacy. I always like to, when I talk about privacy, explain to people the difference between privacy and secrecy. This is especially true when you've had to separate someone from their employment with your organization. I always like to say to people, you know, obviously I can't tell you all the details because that's private information, and I'm legally and ethically bound to protect that person's privacy. Just as you wouldn't want me sharing your private information, you wouldn't want me sharing Sally's private information. It's not that I'm keeping a secret from you. This is just private. And I have found in my career, when I explain privacy and secrecy, people go, oh, you're right. Otherwise, if I don't do that, they assume there's a secret, and then they want to go find out the answer to that secret, and they're driven to kind of figure out what's going on, which increases gossip and rumor. The next thing I just want to share, I learned this years ago in my graduate program. I found very helpful. There's two reasons why confidences are broken. In other words, why do people reveal confidences even when they know they shouldn't? There are two conditions under which confidences get broken. The first is that it's about power. Revealing a secret or sharing hidden knowledge or hidden gossip makes one powerful. I'm in the know and you're not. And when I convey that information to you, now you're in the know and now we're both powerful. And so unauthorized disclosures are often subconscious strivings for power. And the second reality is that it's a burden. Knowing someone's secret or hidden knowledge is too great a burden on the soul, and revealing it causes us to release that burden. And so people are trying to unburden themselves, and they break a secret or break a confidence. Is in my seminary training to be a parish pastor, obviously to hear confession for 25 years, we were taught these two very clearly and taught always to watch ourselves in our own self-awareness. Am I feeling like I need to be seen as powerful? And am I feeling like this is a burden? And finding different ways to deal with each of these personal experiences is important rather than revealing the secret. Any thoughts, Joel?
Yes. My tendency temperamentally, depending on which assessment you use, is to gather information, understand it so I can help other people understand it. But then there are times I have held on to information for the right moment. And it took me quite a while to learn that as a leader, leading teams, mentoring and coaching individuals, as soon as I understand something, it would be really helpful to share that understanding before the right moment, because these people are going to encounter those moments before I'm aware of them. So as you understand this, when I finally understood this, I realized, oh, if I'd have shared this insight with my people before, they could have taken care of their own moments and they would not have escalated up to me. So don't hoard the information is what came to me during this slide.
Yeah, that's really helpful. That's really helpful. And finally, the last, again, another piece of ancient wisdom that I have found very helpful in being a leader who's reforming sometimes often a dysfunctional system or a group of gossipy people or a really over emotional system is this quote from Niccolo Machiavelli that, 500 years ago, he caught this reality really clearly. He said, "And it ought to be remembered that there's nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things." In other words, to change things in a social system. Because, he says, the reformer has for enemies all those who have done well under the old conditions, and lukewarm defenders in those who may do well under the new. This coolness arises partly from the fear of the opponents who have the laws on their side, and partly from the incredulity, the doubt of men who do not readily believe in new things until they've had a long experience of them. 20 years as a reformer leader, and then now the last 15 as a consultant have taught me that the elements of this are so true, that when you're trying to change a system to be more healthy and more vibrant and more full of life, you have enemies who are those who love the old conditions. They love to sit around and gossip about people and talk about people, and all that was fun, and it seemed like harmless fun, but it was certainly anything but. And then you have those people who want to see a new reality come, but they don't have experience of that yet. And so they're not really sure that you can really pull this off, this transformation and this change. And so it's very painful to be in that middle ground between the old and the new. Joel?
It is, but it's doable, especially if you recognize who the early adopters are and nurture them. It's the force field analysis, reduce the resistance, but when it comes to getting buy-in, it's also a matter of nurturing the early adopters while giving enough information to the resistors so that they don't fill in the gaps with things that are going to put pressure on the brake pedal.
Right. Yeah. Well said. So thank you for this. Well, if you want to get in contact with us about anything we can do to help you or your organization, just email us at info@turningwest.com or find us on our website at turningwest.com. It's been a real delight to have you join us today. Again, you're going to get the slides. Our system automatically emails you right after this with a PDF of these slides, so feel free to use them. Our only request is that if you do use them in any other context, please do, give us credit for that, for having put this together. But it's been a real delight, and I really wish you all the best. What I really believe we believe at Turning West is healthy human work systems can change the world. And to lead a healthy human work system, you really need to understand the sociology of how people come together and do their work as a group. And unfortunately, sometimes that does devolve into gossip and rumor, and having these skills and these tools, this counterintuitive nature to how to combat gossip and rumor at your disposal and in your toolkit is super important as a leader. So you can unpack that and lead people in a healthy direction and create a changed system. Your last thoughts, Joel?
Just trust what you know to be true and move towards it, and gather the right kind of thinkers and like-minded, like-hearted people along the way, and you will change those systems to what you really know they ought to be.
Yeah, I would just build on that by saying, find the healthiest people you know and put them around you, right? Who have
Mhm.
good emotional intelligence, and leaders model behavior. One of the primary ways that leaders lead is modeling in their own behavior. So especially one of those last slides there on confidence is, if you can be a person who holds confidence as well and not be a person of gossip, and modeling that for your system, eventually people are going to be inspired by your behavior and want to follow suit. So we've reached the end of our 45 minutes. Thank you for giving up almost an hour with us. Again, you're going to get the slides from us. And if we can ever be of service to you, please do call on us, info@turningwest.com, or TurningWest, just go to our website, turningwest.com itself. So thank you all very much, and blessings on your day.
Have a good day.